Hey Math Aces! Welcome back to Mr. Ace Math. In this lesson, we're going to talk about simplifying algebraic expressions. Now, in order to be successful with this topic, you need to make sure you know each of the following first. You need to make sure that you're comfortable with operations with integers. That means adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers. And you should already know what variables are. So make sure you know those, and let's get started. Before we can simplify expressions, we need to know what expressions are. Expressions are number sentences without an equal sign that are made up of these things called terms. Let's take a look at our first expression. This is the expression 6c plus 5. Now notice when I read the entire expression, I read it as plus. That's important because when we break it up into terms, we read it a little bit differently. And I'll talk more about that in a second. In order to break this expression up into its terms, I like to draw a line down the front of the expression, a line down the back of the expression, and then drop a line wherever I see a plus or minus sign right in front of it. Drop a line at the back of the expression, and then draw a line in front of every plus and minus sign I see. I like to say, drop a line before the sign. So we have a plus sign here, so I'm going to draw a line right in front. Since I have no more plus or minus signs, I've got no more lines to drop, and then I can just box everything by drawing a line across the top, and then drawing a line across the bottom. What we've done here is we've separated this into terms. Now remember, when I read it as an expression, it was 6c plus 5. But when I have separate terms, instead of saying plus or minus, I say positive and negative. So this 6c here, because it has no sign, is automatically positive 6c. And this is what we call a variable term. It's called a variable term because it's a term that has a variable in it. In this case, that's the letter C. And our second term is positive 5. And because it's a number by itself, it's called a constant term, because another name for a number is a constant. So a constant term is just a term that only has a number in it. Now that we know what expressions are, the next big question is, how do we simplify them? There are two steps to simplifying expressions. First, you should remove any parentheses using the distributive property. And second, you combine any like terms you see. In this lesson, I'm going to cover the basics, so let's forget about number 1 for now and get straight to combining like terms. Now we can't do this unless we know what like terms are. Well, like terms are terms that share the same exact variable and exponent. Like I said before, this lesson is going to cover the basics, so let's not worry about the exponent for now and focus just on the variable. That being said, are these two terms like terms? Not at all. This term has a variable c in it, and this one does not. This means we can't combine them. And therefore, our simplified expression is just 6c plus 5. But there's one other thing I want to mention. Even though we can't combine these, there is another way to write it, and here's how it's done. This expression has two terms in it. So I'm going to draw a rectangle with two boxes. The other way to write this is to take this constant term, positive 5, and put it first in our expression. And then take this term, positive 6c, and make it the second term in our expression. So now we have positive 5 and positive 6c. It's not quite right yet though. Whenever our first term is positive, like we had before, we don't need to have a positive sign. So let's get rid of that. However, if it's not the first term, to show that it's positive, and to make it an expression, we have to put a plus sign there. So my first expression was 6c plus 5, and my second expression was 5 plus 6c. But both of these are what we call equivalent expressions, because even though they're in different orders, both expressions contain the exact same terms. They both have a positive 6c and a positive 5. The order doesn't matter. In this example, we've got the expression negative 9m minus 3n plus 5m minus 7m minus 3n plus 10. There are a lot of terms, so let's get started breaking this up. I'll start by drawing a line in the front, a line at the back, and then I'll drop a line in front of the sign. Whenever I see a plus or minus, I'll drop a line in front of it. So here's a minus sign, we'll drop a line. A plus sign, we'll drop a line in front right here. A minus sign, we'll drop a line in front. Another minus sign, we'll drop a line in front. A plus sign, we'll drop a line in front of that. And I'm done drawing lines. So that means I've got all my terms, and finally, to put everything in boxes, I'll draw a line across the top and a line across the bottom. Next, we've got to set up our term table, and to do that, we need to know how many categories we have. So we'll look at our expression and see how many different letters we have, and if there are any numbers, which we also call constants. I see the letter M, I see the letter N, and I do see a constant here. So that's 3 different columns. One for M terms, one for N terms, and one for constants. I'll make my columns, and then my rows, and now I'll go term by term and put it where it's supposed to go in the table. Negative 9m will go in our M column, and then we'll cross it off here. Our next term, negative 3n, is an N term, so it'll go in the N column, and then we'll cross it off. Next, we've got positive 5m. That's an M term, which means it'll be in the M column, and we'll cross it off here. Next, we've got negative 7m. That's also an M, so we'll place it here, right under the positive 5m. And then we'll cross it off. Next, we've got negative 3n. And that's an N term, so we'll bring it right down under the other negative 3n. Then we'll cross it off here and go to our next term, which is positive 10. That's a constant, so it'll go in the constants column. And then we'll cross it off. Now that we have everything sorted into different columns, we already have our like terms bunched together. And that's going to make all of our work a lot easier. Negative 9m plus positive 5m is going to give us negative 4m. And negative 4m plus negative 7m is negative 11m. Next, we'll go to the N column, which is negative 3n plus negative 3n. And that's going to give us negative 6n. So we'll put that right here. And finally, there's nothing to do in the constants column, so we'll just bring down our positive 10. And remember, when we read it separately, this is the term negative 11m, this is the term negative 6n, and this is the term positive 10. But when we read it as an expression, we say this is positive or negative, but the rest is plus or minus. So we'll say negative 11m minus 6n plus 10. And remember, you can create equivalent expressions by moving these terms around with their signs. For example, I could have switched these two terms, like this. And that would give us negative 6n minus 11m plus 10, which is also fine. I could have also switched these two terms. And that would have given us negative 6n plus 10 minus 11m. That's still acceptable. I could have even switched these two terms. And since our first term is positive, we don't need this plus sign, so we can get rid of that. And that gives us the expression 10 minus 6n minus 11m. And that's acceptable. We could have even switched these two terms. And our expression would have been 10 minus 11m minus 6n. All of those expressions I just read are all equivalent because they also contain the three terms positive 10, negative 11m, and negative 6n. So here's your pause and practice. Just pause and practice. Hit the pause button, try these questions, and when you're done, hit play to check and see if your answers are right. Ready, set, go. So here are our answers. Number 1 is either 14x plus 7 or 7 plus 14x. Number 2 is 2d plus 12 or 12 plus 2d. Number 3 is negative 5c minus 6 or negative 6 minus 5c. Number 4 is 4d plus 14 or 14 plus 4d. Number 5 is 6m plus 8n or 8n plus 6m. Number 6 is negative 7x plus 6 or 6 minus 7x. Number 7 is 13. Number 8 is 10a minus 7 or negative 7 plus 10a. Number 9 is 7b minus 4 or negative 4 plus 7b. And number 10, 11c. So let's reflect on what we learned today. Number sentences without an equal sign that are made up of terms are called expressions. Terms that contain variables are called variable terms. Terms that contain only numbers are called constant terms. Remember, in math, another word for number is constant. Terms that share the same exact variable and exponent are called like terms. The 2 steps to simplifying expressions are: 1. Remove any parentheses by using the distributive property. And 2. Combine like terms. In this lesson, we focus on the basics of number 2, combining like terms. To separate terms, you need to drop a line in front of the plus or minus sign. If terms are moved around to create equivalent expressions, the terms must keep their positive or negative sign. Remember in that example when we had 3 different terms in our answer? As long as the expression contains all of the same exact terms with their signs, that is an equivalent expression. True or false? The first term must have a plus sign if it's positive. That is false. That plus sign does not need to be there. In fact, whenever we saw it as the first term in our expression, we always got rid of it because it's not needed.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Questions? Comments? Leave them down below.
And thanks for using Mr. Ace Math. Don't just pass math, ace it.